but I will be accessing
Dear all,
I will listen.
Very warm welcome to this very important event to conduct and moderate this event. I request former scientist and head of the Department of Radiological and Environmental Safety Division of IGCAR, Dr. Venkatesan, to take care of those things. Dr. Venkatesan, please.
Thank you. Good evening to all of you. So I welcome for this very important seminar all the participants who have registered en masse and have shown so much of interest to participate in this. So we are very eagerly waiting to listen to the main two speakers. So first of all, I welcome all of you to this seminar, and I render my warm welcome to the speakers of this seminar, Mr. Sonam Wangchuk and Professor Dhrubajyoti. So dear friends, this seminar is a very, very important one, as the climate change has now reached a stage where every citizen of the world, they are sensing, they are feeling the impact of this climate change. Now it has taken a stage where every citizen wants to react, act in some way to save the earth. So this is the stage where we are now, and we envisage that this seminar also will throw some light on what type of response the people have to show and what type of action plan they have to evolve to check this climate change. I think that these two talks will be helping us to think in this line. So right now, we have with us the speakers, Mr. Sonam Wangchuk from Ladakh. I welcome him. Sir, you can please unmute your video and yeah.
He has unmuted. Yeah.
Yeah, so you can fix him on the screen. So, sir, I welcome you for this seminar. So, dear friends, Mr. Sonam does not require any big introduction. We all know him very well, and he is an inspiration to the young engineers of our country. After doing his engineering, he has decided to live with his people as a son of the soil of Ladakh and try to develop certain technologies which are environmental friendly and innovate those technologies to help the people of Ladakh. By this, he has also attracted people of the world, and he is known as an environmentalist. And very recently, he has been involved in conducting the movement to save the Ladakh environment, Himalayan environment actually. And just a couple of, maybe a week ago, he entered 1 month fast to bring to the notice of the government whatever they promised to develop this Ladakh region and to save the environment. So those promises were not probably fulfilled, and he tried to attract to the notice of the government to this movement. And we from Breakthrough Science Society do participate in these movements throughout our country, wherever such climate change movements are going on. And we have rendered our support to this Ladakh movement in the last week. So with this introduction, I feel very proud to have with us Mr. Sonam Wangchuk. And sir, please take over yourself.
Thank you very much. I hope you can hear me and see me fine.
Mic should be maybe close.
Can you hear me?
Your voice is little feeble, sir. You can little bring your mic closer.
Is it okay now?
No, Mr. Sonam is not. And there is a beep kind of, is there some echo or something?
Is it better?
Not really.
No.
So can you speak once again?
Hello.
No. It seems like the mic is not very close to you. It's not catching the voice. not very, not, it's very feeble.
Yeah, very feeble, sir. Your voice is very feeble, actually.
Any change now?
No, not yet.
Still feeble?
It's not audible, sir. So do you have a headphone or something nearby you with a mic?
Yeah, maybe in that case, can we do the second speaker, because it will take some time to connect the.
So you're asking if we go with the second speaker, right?
I may have connect.
Okay. Mr. Venkatesan, please. I think.
Yeah. I think there are a little bit technical issue with his system, and the speaker has requested to switch over to the second speaker first. And I think it's a good suggestion. And now I welcome the second speaker of our session, who will be dealing with this tackling of this climate crisis, Professor Dhrubajyoti Mukherjee. And he is an eminent geologist and also a member of the Indian National Science Academy. More than that, he's leading this Breakthrough Science Society, presiding over this as a president, and deeply involved in the movements to develop the scientific attitude and scientific culture and temper in the people of our country. So with this introduction, I request Professor Dhrubajyoti Mukherjee to deliver his talk. Professor.
Let me share my presentation first.
Yes. And before that, before he starts, I have some bit of announcement to the audience. Dear friends, there will be a question session taken up at the end of the speeches of both the speakers. So you will get an opportunity to place your questions in the chat box in YouTube and also the chat box in Zoom. So we have our volunteers to pick up those questions, and they will be placed to the audience live in this program. So thank you very much. So be active, place your questions in both Zoom as well as YouTube. Thank you very much. So now to the professor again.
Thank you, Professor Venkatesan. It's a privilege for me to speak at this gathering where so many people have attending. And it is not an issue anymore that the earth is gradually warming in the course of the last 300 years or so. The scientists have definitely established the warming, and they have also established that the warming is primarily due to the human activities. Now, in this short talk of about half an hour, it will not be possible for me to deal with all the aspects of the climate change. I will discuss only two aspects of the climate change. One, what is the impact of the climate change on the people's lives, on the environment? And secondly, what we can do to face the crisis of climate change. So, we start with the impact of climate change. The most obvious impact of the warming of the earth is seen in the snow and ice cover of the earth. And this is spectacularly displayed by the Arctic sea ice, which has, we can see in this diagram, two figures, how much the Arctic sea ice has melted from 1979 to 2003. And there is now almost a clear passage from the Pacific to the Atlantic through the Bering Strait. Now, the Arctic melting has got multitudinous effects. It is acting as a feedback because the melting of the ice means that less of sun's rays are reflected back and more get absorbed, so that the more the ice melts, the hotter it the earth becomes. So this is a sort of a positive feedback effect. And then again, Arctic, the conditions in the Arctic controls the climate of the world as a whole. So the melting of the Arctic, ice in the Arctic, is affecting the climate, the world's climate, and it is disturbing the jet stream, and this jet stream is destabilized, and as a result, the European winters sometimes become very severe. The mountains, the glaciers on the mountains, the Himalayas, Alps, the Andes, the Rockies, they are also melting. Now, where do all these waters go from the melting of the Arctic, from the melting of the Antarctic, and also from the melting of the mountains? They all eventually find their way into the sea and raise the sea level. So in the past 1993 to 2008, you can see how the sea level has risen. It is rising at the rate of 3.5 millimeters per year. Now, sea level rise is a menace for the people living in the coastal areas. Many of them are displaced from their homeland because of the rising sea. And we have a host of so-called climate refugees as a result of this rising sea level. This is particularly becoming very acute for the Sundarbans in West Bengal and Bangladesh. Then the permafrost, the permanently frozen ground, is also thawing. The permafrost thawing not only destabilizes the ground above it, it also releases carbon dioxide and methane to the atmosphere. And as you know, carbon dioxide and methane, they are greenhouse gases, and the more the permafrost melts, the more of these greenhouse gases are released, and the more hotter the earth becomes. The warming has given rise to some very extreme weather events. We have all experienced the extreme heat waves in the months of May and June. This diagram shows how throughout Asia, the temperatures have risen very much. So, with all the other consequences of heat wave. And the heat waves are becoming more intense and more severe because as the temperature rises, it puts more energy to the atmosphere. And that energy gets expressed in the form of the intense heat waves. So apart from the intense heat wave, there are other also extreme weather events like wildfires, which has devastated vast areas in Australia, California, Canada, Spain, Portugal. You have all read about these things in the papers. It is also giving rise to prolonged drought in several parts of the world, and that drought is affecting the agriculture also. The high temperatures above the oceans is putting more energy into the atmosphere, and that is making the cyclones which developed on the oceans, they become more frequent and more severe. And we know we have the list of cyclones: Amphan, Ayla, Foni, Yash, and the latest Nargis, how the cyclones are becoming more frequent, and they are devastating large areas in the Bangladesh, Odisha, West Bengal, and even we are with the western part of India, the Arabian coast also experienced cyclone, which is a very unusual thing. And then we have the phenomenon of intense rain within very short periods. So maybe whole year's rain is poured down within a span of 3-4 days. So naturally, such intense rains gives rise to flooding of the cities and the townships and the villages. And the picture here shows a German town which is inundated by floods. We have also witnessed devastating floods in Mumbai, in Chennai, in Kerala. So all these extreme events are becoming more frequent as a result of the climate change. And it is impacting the biological systems also. I have written down this. It has its effect on the biosphere, the area of habitation of these different organisms. They are shifting towards higher latitudes and higher heights because of the increasing temperature. And the higher temperature is affecting the acidity of the ocean, the overall chemistry of the ocean. And this ocean chemistry, this affects not only the marine life in the oceans, but it also affects the ocean currents. And I'll come to that point later on. And the climate change is also responsible for the loss of biodiversity in many regions, and the phenomenon like adaptive mutations are becoming more frequent. So new species are appearing which was not existing before, to adapt to the higher temperatures. So what is in store for us in the future? It is projected that the temperature will rise by 2,100 degrees by anything between 1.5 to 6 degrees, depending on how we act and how we behave. The hot extremes, the heat waves, the intense rainfall events, and the floods will become more frequent, more severe. There will be prolonged droughts in the drought-affected areas like it did in Maharashtra last year. And this will affect agriculture, which will ultimately lead to food shortages. And the future, as I mentioned already, the future tropical cyclones, typhoons, and hurricanes will become more frequent and more intense. And the sea level will rise, and this rise may be as high as 7 meters by 2200. So you can see that many of the coastal habitations, the towns, coastal towns, they will be inundated by 2200. 7 meters high is unimaginable. Then with this increase in the sea level, there will be increased coastal erosion, encroachment on the coastal areas, and the rainfall events that will bring changes in the hydrological systems and the river discharges. And the rivers which are sourced in the glaciers, because the glaciers are melting, initially there will be more flow in the rivers because of the meltwaters. And then as the glacial storage decreases, the rivers will become gradually more and more degraded. And rivers like Ganga, Sindhu, they may become eventually degraded and almost dried up. The relation between rainfall and climate change is somewhat complicated. There is not a one-to-one relationship. The modeling by the climate scientists indicate that the increase in precipitation is very likely in high latitudes, while the decreases are likely in most subtropical land regions. And the monsoons in India and the neighboring countries will also be affected. It has been calculated that every degree of warming is likely to increase the monsoon rainfall by 5%. The monsoon precipitation is projected to go up in the mid to long term in South Asia. And the climate change that we are witnessing, this gives rise to another very alarming thing. There is the possibility of abrupt climate change in which gradual global warming triggers a sudden shift in the Earth's climate, causing parts of the world to dramatically heat up or cool down within the span of a few years. So we are faced with this specter of the sudden climate changes in some areas on the Earth. The Atlantic meridional overturning circulation, which is controlling the ocean currents, and also the climate and weather of the coastal regions. You can see here that the Atlantic meridional circulation, the hot water from the southern tropics, it gradually flows north under the action of the wind flow. And then as it proceeds towards the northern latitudes, it gets cooler, becomes more dense, and then goes down, sinks, and then come back to again to the southern Pacific, so that this cycle goes on. Now, as the temperature warms, the Arctic region, it will not cool so much, and the salt water will be replaced by the fresh water from the melt, and it will not let the cold current sink into below, so that the Atlantic circulation will become weak. It may even disappear, and that will be a disaster for the world's climatic belts. Then the ocean chemistry, changes in the ocean chemistry gives rise to disturbances in the marine biospheres. The bleaching of the tropical coral reefs, the Great Barrier Reef off the coast of Australia is under threat because of the climate change. And it will decrease the water resources in many semi-arid areas. It will affect the overall ecosystem and crop productivity. Human health will be affected in the extreme heat wave condition. Heat strokes may kill people. The droughts will give rise to malnutrition. Floods gives rise to waterborne diseases, and that will help more mosquitoes and insects to thrive, which will be responsible for the spread of diseases. It will impact the economy also. It affects, why does it affect the economy? Because it affects the resource mobilization, and also it affects the productivity by exerting its influence through the human beings. And in India, one study carried out at the Delhi School of Economics has shown that 1 degree temperature rise in India has depressed the economic growth by 3.89%. So, what does it mean particularly for India? This is a threat for the entire earth, but particularly for India, the country is expected to see an increase in frequency and severity of hot extremes. Incidents of forest fire will go up because of the heat wave conditions. Increase in rainfall will be more severe in the southern parts of India. This comes from climate modeling. The rain could also increase by 20% in the southwest coast. Monsoon precipitation is projected to go up in the long term over South Asia. And these extreme rainfall events in the mountainous regions can give rise to the occurrence of glacial lake outbursts, landslides, and floods, like the Great Kedarnath disaster, which was a result of intense rain for over a period of a few days. And the snow line will gradually go up, and glacier volumes will decline, which will affect the flow in our Indian rivers. And the regional mean sea level in South Asia will continue to rise, displacing millions of peoples and making them into climate refugees. Now, how do you tackle the climate crisis? It is necessary to understand a little bit about how how the greenhouse gases actually act in raising the temperature. It traps the heat from the sun, and that is responsible for the rise in the temperature. Now, if the greenhouse gases emissions, say we stop it overnight today, so the emission becomes zero, that does not mean that the warming will stop, because the carbon dioxide that has already accumulated in the atmosphere because of the past activities, past emissions, that will continue to heat up the atmosphere and will raise the temperature of the earth. So there is a lag effect also. So the scientists have modeled that if nothing is done, if we go on emitting carbon dioxide as we are doing now, then by 2070, 19% of the Earth's surface will be at the annual average temperature of 29 degrees. Average temperature 29 degrees means that in the summers, the temperatures may rise well up to 47, 48, 50 degrees, so that this becomes unbearable. So this 20% of the Earth's surface will become unlivable. And if it gets more, then I don't know what will happen to the human civilization. So empirically, climate scientists say that the minimum acceptable annual average temperature is 1.5 to 2 degrees centigrade. We feel some discomfort if the average temperature rises by 1.5 to 2 degrees, but somehow we can manage. So that much temperature, we should try to restrict the emissions in such a way that the temperature rise is not more than 2 degrees. It is preferably within 1.5 degrees. And to keep the temperature rise at the level of 1.5 to 2 degrees, the current emission must be reduced by 40%, 45% by 2030 relative to the 2010 level. And the net zero emissions means the point at which the carbon dioxide, the greenhouse gases emitted and the greenhouse gases subtracted, that becomes equal, so that there is no net green increase. So if we gradually reduce the emissions and then take away the carbon dioxide from the atmosphere, then the net zero emission will occur. And to keep the temperature at the level of 1.5 to 2 degrees, the net zero emission must be achieved by 2050. So we have to adopt the twin strategies of mitigation and adaptation. This diagram shows the nature of the climate crisis. The lower curve shows how the greenhouse gases have increased from 1850, from when the instrumental recording started, and then see that after 1970, it is how it has started to rise sharply. And it has reached the level of about 420 ppm, the greenhouse gas concentration in the atmosphere. Now, scientists have found out that there is a direct correlation between the rise in temperature and the rise in the greenhouse gas concentration. So we can calculate that for 1.5 degrees centigrade rise, the concentration of the greenhouse gases must be less than, say, 500 ppm. And to keep it below 2 degree rise, the concentration must be less than 600 ppm. So now we are at a level of 420. So we are very close to the critical value of 518, which will raise the temperature by 1.5. This is the crisis, that we have a very little time left to reduce our emission, so that we can restrict the temperature rise to 1.5 degree. And this idea gives rise to the carbon budget. This carbon budget means that how much total carbon in the form of carbon dioxide, methane, etc., we can release to the atmosphere. These three diagrams, pie diagrams, show that how much we have already emitted and how much is left. So whatever is left, that is our, we call it the remaining budget or the emission budget. That is, we can emit maximum that amount of greenhouse gas to keep the temperature below a certain level. So below, if you want to restrict the temperature to 1.5, the remaining budget is 420 gigatons. We have emitted 2,475 gigatons over the course of the last 200 years. And then if you want to restrict it to 1.7 degree, it is 770 gigaton. If we restrict to 2 degrees, then it is about 1,200 gigatons. So that is the carbon budget. And then IPCC, the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, they have said that the bottom line is we must reduce the greenhouse gas emission. To reduce the greenhouse gas emission, we must have a certain way of the socio-economic development which will reduce the greenhouse gases. That means we must have certain industrial policy, we must have certain forest policies, like we must have certain agricultural policies. These two together, all these together constitute the socio-economic policy that we adopt. So the IPCC, it gave that there are certain, it calculated for certain hypothetical socio-economic pathways, what would be the scenario and what would be the temperature rise. So here in this table, we have given 5 possible scenarios. The first one is the most strict emission, that is the emission is severely reduced, and this is the sustainable development path that will give rise to the peak temperature of 1.6 degrees. Remember, I said that even if we reduce the gas, the temperature will continue to rise, reach a peak at about 2040 to 2060. That will be about 1.6 degree. And by 2100, it will cool down to 1.4 degrees centigrade. So that keeps the temperature below 1.5. Then the low emission, this is very strong reduction, but not as severe as the first one. That will give rise to 1.7 degrees at 2040 to 2060 and 1.8 degrees to at 2100. And the last one is the SSP5, that is we do nothing. We go on behaving as it is, as we are doing today, and we go on emitting greenhouse gases to the atmosphere. So business as usual. That will give rise to 2.4 degrees centigrade within 2040 and 4.4 degrees centigrade at 2100. So 4.4 degrees centigrade, human civilization, whether it will survive or not, is really doubtful. And then there are other in-between intermediate things. This I'll show in a graph, which will see this is these two bottom graphs are the one which is very strong reduction. It has reached a peak. The black part is the historically emitted one, and the colored part is the future projection. This is calculated on the basis of climate modeling. So you can see the two bottom parts, they keep the temperature at 2100 below 2 degrees centigrade. The present policy, we are making some reductions, but not enough. So if we continue with the present policy of a little bit moderate reduction, that will, the current policies, that will give to temperatures of 2.7 to 3 degrees. And in the international meets, many countries have pledged to reduce. They have not actually reduced, but they have pledged to reduce by a certain year so much of greenhouse gas. So if we take that pledges into account, we will reach a curve like this, and that will give rise to a temperature rise of 2.5 degrees. And this is the business as usual, which the maximum temperature rise can be 4.4 degrees centigrade, which is absolutely unacceptable. So this is the shows the projected temperature rise. The previous diagram showed the carbon dioxide concentration. This shows the temperature rise corresponding to those 5 cases. And this is a special study carried out for the Indian subcontinent. In India, we have already increased the temperature by 1 degree centigrade by 2020. And the way we are acting now, we are heading for 3.5 degrees in 2100. So we must do something more than what we are doing now if we want to keep the temperature below 2 degrees centigrade. Now, what are the ways in which we can keep down the emission? The first is reduce the intensity of the power generation, change over to solar, wind, and small hydropower from fossil fuel-based power generation. You switch to electric transportation, electric cars, electric trucks, trains. We redesign the cities so that you promote more public transport, not individual vehicles, and design make the land use in such a way that people have to commute less, people have to travel less to go from their home to their place of work. And promote the green cover of the cities, protect the water bodies in the cities. The last two are ways of taking the carbon dioxide off from the atmosphere. So the first 3 is to reduce the emission. The last 2 is to take away the carbon dioxide from the 2 together causes the net rise in the carbon dioxide. So we increase the forest areas because the forests absorb carbon dioxide, and we promote research and adopt whatever is possible to capture the carbon emitted and store them and develop the appropriate technology and maybe utilize them for some purposes. This is an active area of research, this carbon storage and technology. It is still in a very nascent stage, but we have to go for that. And the adaptation measures are the way some temperature has already risen, and some is going to rise in the next 30 years or so. Temperature is going to rise, we cannot stop it. So it is, even if we reduce it now, the emission, the temperature would rise. So we'll have to adapt to this rise in temperature. And some of the adaptation measures are listed here. One is plan for at least 20% green cover in the cities, protect and expand the water bodies, make the buildings and the appliances more energy efficient, have new building codes so that they are better insulated and better ventilated, and develop early warning systems for the cyclones, for the heat waves, so that people get warning before and can take appropriate precautionary measures, and then build cyclone shelters. Something is being done already in the Sundarbans. And adopt protective measures against the sea level rise, build the retaining walls so that the sea, storm surges from the sea do not inundate the land, and take care of the, we also have to take care, have the financial instruments to take care of the losses to the climate related disasters, help the people, help build up the infrastructure which is destroyed by these extreme events. So that financial instruments will also have to be developed. The mitigation and adaptive measures which are necessary for a responsible development pathway, they require a lot of financial investment. And that is a main point of discord now. This is a global, climate change is a global problem, and it requires a global approach. And there is a necessity of international collaboration. And there's the most countries, so we have recognized this, and it started, the collaborative action started from the Rio in 1990s. And then every year we have the conference of parties, the summits where we discuss. I'll go to that later on. Now, this we enter into the domain. So far, we have discussed the physical aspects of the climate change. Now we enter into the domain of the politics related to the climate change, because to institute the emission means to have to design our developmental path appropriately, and that requires a political will and political action. So the main question in the politics is who is to bear the cost. Because if we want to replace the existing industry with a more climate-friendly industry, that will require a lot of money. Who is going to provide that money? That is the main bone of contention in these international meetings. Now here, there is a concept of common but differentiated responsibility. Common means it is a global problem, so it is the duty of all the countries, all the people of the world to work for reducing the temperature rise. So that is the common responsibility. But the differentiated responsibility is that the entire problem started from the Industrial Revolution. So from 1751 to 2017, all the carbon dioxide that is emitted during the process of the industrialization and Industrial Revolution, that is the root of the problem that we are facing today. So those, the benefits of the industrialization, that is being enjoyed by the developed countries. They are responsible in the main for the historical carbon dioxide emission. The poor countries, they emitted very little carbon dioxide, but they are bearing the brunt of the climate change now. So the cumulative emissions, you can say that 25% of all the emissions came from United States. 22% came from European Union. They are the main industrialized countries. 3% only from India. So India is responsible only for the 3% of cumulative action, but India is already facing the problems due to the climate change. And China, it is higher, but this high figure is primarily because China during the last 2 decades is aggressively industrializing and emitting carbon dioxide. So the current emission, if you see, the picture is like this. The China has got the maximum, emitting maximum, followed by USA and European Union. India is also, the emission is rising. then Russia, China, Japan, and the other countries. So, but if we go into the per capita income, then you can see that the developed countries, they have per capita is much more compared to the underdeveloped countries. Like India, it has got only 1.9, Brazil is 2.2, USA have 15.5, China is 8.12. That has mainly increased during the last 2 decades when China is aggressively industrializing. So this is the concept of common and differentiated responsibility, that the developed countries, this was accepted at the Kyoto Protocol, that the different developed countries would bear the primary responsibility of reducing the greenhouse gas emission, and they would provide the necessary funds to the poor countries to transition to a climate-friendly economy, climate-friendly industry, and capacity building, so that their emission is reduced. But we are witnessing the reluctance of the developed countries to release funds to the poor countries to development to reduction emission technology. I will not go into the details of the history of what they committed to give as aid and what they have actually done. These figures I am not going into. And they are equally unwilling to reduce their greenhouse gas emission. From 1990, these discussions have started that we have to reduce the emission. And from 1990 till 2023, the greenhouse gas emission by the developed countries have increased from 22 gigatons to 37 gigatons. So they have gone on increasing while talking about the necessity of reducing the emission. And they are pointing to India and China, who are increasing their emissions because they are industrializing. And so this is because of this tussle, all these international conferences, they yielded very little result. But at least in the last conference, Paris conference, all the countries have agreed to restrict the rise of the temperature to 1.5 degrees centigrade. To 1.5 degrees centigrade, and the voluntary net zero emission target, all the countries have fixed. India has fixed at 2070. No, we have to, I'll stop here. We have to wait how things develop in future. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor. I think you can unshare your screen. Actually, it's a very vast topic that includes the science of climate change, the impact part of it, and the mitigation measures, and what are the actions that the society has to take. Covering everything in this nutshell of about 40 minutes is really a tremendous task. And Professor, I think you have been justifying the task. Friends, there are a lot of questions pouring in the Zoom account. And after the second speaker completes his presentation, we will take up certain questions. Also, I have to tell you that many questions, more than 400 questions, which while registering you have placed, all those things have been grouped and passed on to the speakers. And I hope they have touched upon those questions while dealing with their presentation. Of course, Professor Dhrubajyoti has covered some of them, and we expect the next speaker to touch upon some of the questions which are passed on to him, as well as what he wants to speak. Now, I welcome Sri Sonam Wangchuk. Already I have given an introduction about him, and he doesn't require any introduction to our Indian audience. He is very deeply involved in the movement to save Ladakh, to save the Himalayan environment. And it is we are all very eagerly waiting to listen from a very activist, a very active participant who is dealing with the people dealing with the government and dealing with the challenge of this climate change. So I request now Mr. Sonam to start his lecture.
Hi, hello. Can you hear me now? Is it better?
Yes, of course. And
Yeah.
the video can be on.
Yeah, I have switched it on. If you can see me, I hope. No?
Oh, no, not yet.
Maybe at your end.
Yeah, we are able to see Mr. Sonam.
Okay, fine.
Okay.
Yes.
Wonderful. So, greetings from Ladakh, all the scientists and science enthusiasts and environment friends. I bring you warm greetings from this very cold place, and thank you all for doing this to spread awareness about the challenges that we face and to bring scientific temper and ways to deal with the challenges that we are faced with as a community on this planet. So Ladakh is one of the places that is a first-hand, victim of climate change, with very little that it does to deserve it. So we here in the high Himalayas and those at the seashores are the first ones to face the wrath of nature. So before I go further, I thought I'll bring you home to what really is happening on ground, as a ground report, first-hand report. I thought, like Professor was explaining about what all will happen as we go on this path of so-called development. We have already started facing some of those, and tomorrow it will be your chance or turn. And therefore, I thought I should show you some pictures of what all is happening in this part of the world, which is one of the early, victims of this. So let me share my screen and see if you can see this. Yes, can you see the screen now?
Yeah, we are able to see.
Yes, yes.
Okay. Okay. So, for those of you who may not be familiar, this is Ladakh, top north of the country, uh, beyond the Himalayas, actually. People think it is in the Himalayas, but it is trans-Himalayas, and there is a world of difference between Himalayas and trans-Himalayas. Himalayas are green, lush green. As you cross the Himalayas, it's dry deserts. And this part of the Hindu Kush Himalayas is also world's water tower, ice reservoirs that are often called the third pole after the north and the south pole. And let me show you why they call it this. Here's a picture you can see, I hope. Here's a picture of these trans-Himalayan high mountains, which are an abode of glaciers, thousands of them, roughly 50,000 glaciers that uh, uh, that abound here. So you can see that in this picture that I took from the aeroplane, in just one frame, there are roughly 10 glaciers that you can see. So you can imagine how densely the glaciers are here. And these glaciers are a source of water, not just for people in places like Ladakh in the high Himalayas, but actually entire north of India and south of China. Roughly 2 billion people depend directly or indirectly on these ice towers for their water. So now what is happening to these glaciers? Let's see. Let's look at some glaciers closely. Here you can see many of them, but let's go closer. With global warming, how these glaciers are melting away very fast, and it's causing us water shortages already, and some villages are becoming climate refugees already. Let's see what happens closely. This is a famous or used to be famous glacier called Drangdrung. It used to be a towering height some 30 years ago. Now you can see it's a shadow of itself, yeah, as it melts fast in the hot summers. And it doesn't go away silently. The problem is that it leaves big, huge problems behind as it goes away to cause even more problems. So let's see. At the snout of the glacier, the lower end of the glacier, in hot summers, there is a torrent, a wild stream that comes out. You can see the glacier above. It's dark with some debris from around, and now with human activities like diesel vehicle pollution, heating of houses with fossil fuels, the black carbon, the smoke or soot, uh, rises up in the air, and winds take them and deposit them on the glacier. So you can see the glacier behind there looking almost black. So black absorbs sun, and it melts even faster than what global warming would explain. So in recent years, research has shown that these glaciers are melting even faster because of local or activities in the Himalayan foothills. So that's why so much water is escaping these in the hot summers. And this water, again, is not going away silently. It causes big floods and big droughts almost alternatingly. We have droughts and we have floods. So let's see what I experienced in the last 20, 30 years. So this was a flash flood when the glaciers melted very fast in the summer heat. In 2006, the village where we are building an alternative university, a village called Pyang, this was inundated, and lots of houses were washed away. Lots of people, lost lives and houses. And not lots died, but more wealth was lost in this flash flood. This was 2006. So me and my students, we went to volunteer help to this village. And while helping them out of the landslides and the flooded fields, I was curious and wanted to ask an old man, the oldest man I could find. And I found one old man in his 80s, and I asked him, "Sir, how often do you have such floods? When was the last time you saw it?" And the old man looked at me and said, "I don't remember any. I have not seen in my lifetime. I have only heard stories." That was 2006. The next one was 2010, when a quarter of the city of Leh was washed away. Roughly 1,000 people were lost, most probably dead, and so many houses washed away. That was just 4 years after the first one, 2010. And the next one was 2013. And the next one was 2017. So you can see the frequency with which these flash floods occur now. And each of these is punctuated by a drought. So this is what is happening in the high Himalayas. When it rains, it pours. Otherwise, it's a drought. So that's the cloudburst phenomena that we are seeing more and more in these Himalayas, which are very dry, and therefore, with each rain, all the fine soils are washed away, and any little vegetation is washed away. The next flood is easier because there is nothing now to hold the water. So a lesser rainfall can cause a similar flash flood now. So this is what we are facing on ground, and I thought I should bring you home first-hand report from a person that you are seeing directly about what is happening here. Now, it's not that we in the mountains of Ladakh are sitting hand on hand, just silent spectators. We have been also doing our best to not contribute to the causes of climate change, and as much as possible adapt to what is changing, which is not in our control, because this is not happening from our mountains alone. So back in the 90s, we set up these alternative schools where we were learning and teaching to live in harmony with nature so that we don't contribute. So already in mid 90s, this school that you often hear about as a school where the criteria of admission is a failure in exams rather than grades and positions in examinations. Anyway, I won't go into that part of the story, but just to tell you that from very early in 90s we went completely solar heating of the buildings in a very cold polar climate of Ladakh. It's not easy. A lot of fuel is burnt to keep people warm, but this was one school where not a drop of oil, not a blade of uh, fuel or wood was burnt. All of the heating is done by the sun, and all the buildings were built with mud or earth, soil, which is a natural material with very little embedded energy required to build it or shape it. It's eternally recyclable. 50 years later, when we want to redo the building, we use the same materials, not like concrete. Huh? So eternally recyclable, abundantly available. So economically speaking, it's a kind of nirvana. The same is true for sun. Abundant. Nobody is so poor they can't afford sun or earth. And of course, electricity came from photovoltaics very early in the 90s when it was not common. So this could be perhaps the school campus world's first to go fully carbon neutral and zero energy. We were doing our part already for the last 30 years to solve this problem, or at least not add to the problem. And at this school, almost everything happens with solar energy, from cooking with large parabolic dishes that cook for 100 people, to greenhouses that grow green vegetables in peak of winter, to natural solar lighting of buildings, to photovoltaics where energy is needed in electricity. Heat is not something we take from these photovoltaics. Heat can be directly taken from the sun into the buildings using appropriate architecture to passive solar heat the buildings. Electricity is used only to fill the gap, like computers, television, or lighting at night. Therefore, we have to be very careful in how we solve the problems. What can be done directly with the sun shouldn't be done through photovoltaics into lead acid batteries and then LED bulbs and all the mumbo jumbo. But technology may not be needed if you wisely solve it without having to use this. Anyway, water heating is done with the sun. Water pumping or lifting is with the sun. Even cows, apart from human beings and students, live in solar heated cow sheds. So we need to come up with answers, solutions also, rather than just be victims. And we didn't want to do that, even though we contribute hardly anything in this global warming. So at this school, we developed various technologies innovatively using earth, sun, ice, and fire. So you can see the building there. It has a glazed or transparent facade, and it is built of mud, as you can see on the top right picture. And then the magic of chapter on heat in class 9th, heat chapter has convection, conduction, radiation. So we integrated all of this in the education of the children. So when they learn chapter of heat, conduction, convection, radiation, we would teach them how our buildings should be built and build them and live in them and experience convection. You can see convection there. The air heats up in that greenhouse with the sun, and it becomes lighter and goes into the building, gives its heat to the walls and becomes cool and dense and is pushed into the greenhouse again. And the cycle continues, much like the water cycle that professor was explaining about the Atlantic Sea push of warm water currents. So the same convection happens to heat the buildings. And when you close the windows at night, the heat is trapped in the walls of the building, and you get a room as warm as, let me show you, when it is minus 20 degrees outside in January, and it can be very cold, as you can see, polar, it will be plus 18 inside, comfortably plus 18. Actually, New Delhi stays at around 10 to 12 degrees without heating. And these buildings here in Ladakh are plus 18 without heating. So you can imagine how I feel cold when I come down from Ladakh to Delhi in January. And the good thing about these, with a little use of geography, is that these buildings are oriented in such a way that they are naturally cooler than normal buildings in summer also, while being warm in winters. So what we are trying to do here is going beyond just sustainable development. You know, we talk about sustainable development, so on. Development itself is good. People want comfort. I can understand. I never say that you should live like 300 years ago. You should live comfortably. But for that comfort, you shouldn't pay with the planet itself. You can't kill the golden egg laying goose for the golden eggs all in once. So, what is then sustainable and what is beyond sustainable? Because sustainable will not take us through this critical time of climate change and global warming. Sustaining what is broken, sustaining bad systems will keep it broken. So we need to think of regenerative and restorative and regenerative development, which is what we try to practice at our school and alternative university. You can see down there, we use animals to plow the fields. And these animals, unlike tractors, can eat farm waste. They don't need diesel, and they don't excrete fumes, poisonous fumes. Their dung actually is a fuel in cold places like Ladakh. Yak dung is a fuel. So if we used the farm waste, the tree leaves and trees that we have grown, farms that we grow, and feed the yaks, and their dung we use to heat the house behind, it will be perfectly sustainable because we are using what we grow. We are releasing carbon, but we are capturing carbon also from the plants that we grow. This would be sustainable, but this is not enough for the earth to be healed. What we do instead is the animals give dung, but we don't burn it to heat that house that you can see behind. That house is heated directly from the sun. So no need of dung burning like other houses. Now, when you take the heat from the sun, the dung can be decomposed and can go back to nature, to the trees, to the fields, and the trees grow bigger, the flowers smile, the birds and bees are happier. That is regenerative, that is restorative. So this is the kind of development that we need to go for. And now you could say, does it give comfort? Well, developed world, you know, like US and Europe, keep their houses at plus 22. But for that comfort, they trash the whole planet. They burn so much fossil fuel that you have seen in the previous speech, how it has added to the carbon particles. The ppm has gone so high up. That's at what cost we get that comfort of plus 22. What we do here is beyond modern. Modern is what US and Europe does. What we do here is that we get that plus 22, plus 20 comfort, but without trashing the planet, all while helping the planet heal. And that is regenerative development. This is what we need to practice. You know, it's a kind of example of what other forms of development should also be. You get human comfort, but with that you heal the planet also. Now, this is what is happening in rest of the world. Actually, even in the city in Ladakh, this is happening as we try and promote these technologies. But this is how Delhi becomes in winter. You can see all the smoke, the pollution, air is unbreathable. And in Delhi, you do this with all the pollution of the vehicles, the industries, the stubble burning, and so on. And in summer, again, you have air conditioners and so on, which with blasting thermal power plants that make the air like this. So while in Ladakh, in cold climate, we solve it with solar energy, in hot climate also, you could use thermodynamic principles to keep your buildings cooler or use smaller size air conditioners if you use insulation in your buildings like we do here, or grow more trees and roofs that have plants, green roofs that have evaporative cooling while shading also from the sun, all such things. But at the same time, what I believe in hot Indian cities, how we can reduce greenhouse gases is by reducing our demand. We should not only look at the supply side, more air conditioners, more power, more fuel, more money, but also reduce the demand side. For example, I have seen whenever I go to Delhi, Mumbai, in conference rooms, while it is plus 45 outside, I'm shivering in the conference room. I need to take a jacket. This is a crime. In the hotel room, while it is 45 degrees outside, I have to take a down duvet, feather blanket to keep warm. You keep your thermostats at plus 20 when it is plus 45 outside. This is a blind, mindless copying of New York and London. They are cold countries. They have plus 20 only. But we are a warm country where people are biologically tuned to be happy at plus 26 to plus 27. Thermal comfort studies show that in India, people are more comfortable at plus 27. Then we bring it down to plus 20 and make them uncomfortable. And in doing so, so much fossil fuels are burned. You should know that for every degree that an air conditioner cools down, 6% of the energy could be saved if you raise the thermostat rather than 20 degrees. If your rooms are kept at 21, 6 degrees will be saved. 6% energy will be saved. If you keep it at plus 22, 12 degrees would be saved. So similarly, if you keep it at 26 or 27 degrees, then one third of the energy and more importantly, pollution emission could be saved. So this is what we need to think on our own feet rather than the way the people in New York and London do. We need not copy them and their thermostat levels also. We have to do what is best suited to Delhi and Mumbai. So that's how we should solve the hot plains and like we do in the cold places, and we could reduce emissions huge ways. Why I'm talking about housing sector also is because housing sector is one of the biggest polluters. Automobiles is second, housing is the top polluter. So we can do a lot by innovation. Similarly, at the school we try to solve climate change adaptation. This one was mitigation, what we just saw. This is adaptation. As our glaciers are melting fast with global warming, we start finding ways to make our own glaciers, artificial glaciers. After all, they're reservoirs of ice that melt in spring to give water to the farmers. I won't be able to explain in detail. You can look up videos on YouTube, but this is to freeze or reglaciate the melting waters, especially in winters when people do not use the water in the streams. So with my students, we started this experiment, and then we built huge vertical cones or pyramids of ice. Why this shape? This geometric shape has a very interesting property. Cones or spheres have low surface area for the given volume, which means that the sun is not able to melt it prematurely in spring and summer. So it lasts very long into midsummer, giving water to the farmers when they really need. In winter, they don't need water because there's no farming, so water goes waste. That is when we freeze the ice water in these conical geometries. Now, the geometry keeps it frozen till May and June. That's the time when people fight for every drop of water. So when it melts in May and June, it gives water for new fields and trees and so on. This is spreading in many parts of the Himalayas and beyond into Europe and Alps and Andes and so on. The one you see there is half the height of Qutub Minar and holds roughly 12 million liters of water that will melt and give farmers at the time when they need. We are building cascading, series of these artificial glaciers also, and these got us some publicity and recognition. But this is not something we are proud of, because these ice stupas or the solar heated houses are not going to solve our problem of melting glaciers. Actually, the solution lies with people in big cities. Their lifestyle causes this. So therefore, a few years ago, we started a movement called I Live Simply, to give the message, please live simply in the big cities so we may simply live in the mountains. So this campaign was done in a fun way for young people to participate as a crowdfunding platform. Not really funding with rupees or dollars, but here you can go and give or contribute in an alternative fun dollar by making pledges to change your lifestyle. It is your lifestyle change that will help us. So therefore, on this website, you can promise to change your lifestyle, say from using car to bicycles or walking, aeroplanes to trains, not wasting food, not ironing your clothes, using the staircase instead of lifts, planting trees to sequester carbon, and so on. For each of these activities, the website will give you how much in dollars you are contributing, worth how much, so you can feel how much of a contribution you have made to the planet. Now, this is expecting citizens to play their role. Now, citizens can contribute, but so should government. And that brought me to demanding from government to make special policies for fragile ecosystems like the Himalayas. So that's how some of you may have followed the climate fast that we started doing in Ladakh for two reasons. One, to make citizens aware in the big cities so that they change their lifestyles. Secondly, to pressure governments to adopt policies like in our case, there's this provision in the Indian constitution called sixth schedule, which gives indigenous people living in the mountains right to develop the area as how they see fit, rather than being taken over by multinational corporations, mining and industrial lobbies. People can decide how much of industrial or other development to allow. So these are what the government can do, but as much can citizens do by contributing with their lifestyle change. Now, this started last year in winter, 2024 January, with a video that I made with a message to the Prime Minister that all is not well in Ladakh, and it was followed by a fast in minus 25 degrees. and very soon media picked up the story, and lot of interest from the whole nation and the world grew. And the January fast of 5 days was followed by a week-long fast or 9 days fast in June of 2023. 2023. This is, and then finally in 2024 again there were huge movements in Ladakh, where roughly 1/3 of the entire population walked and voted with their feet to say that government must implement these provisions in the constitution to safeguard the environment and culture of this fragile ecological and cultural zone. And this time in 2024, the last one was 23. This time in 2024, I went on together with friends and supporters from Ladakh and elsewhere. First 21 days climate fast, then 3 days, and in total, people in relay went on 66 days of climate fast. So this is not the end. Now we will continue our struggle, and we thank you all for supporting us from your own side, whether through the members or the organizations by supporting with letters to the Prime Minister or organizing fasts in your places. So many people supported, and we are really grateful to you all for that. And thank you for raising topics like this and raising awareness about these issues of people who are the first victims. Very soon, others will follow. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Thank you very much. And I think all of us are taken to Ladakh, and we are still feeling that we are staying in Ladakh with you. And it is really a wonderful speech to know about the condition of Ladakh, the way how science and technology, even the student level science, could be used to mitigate the local level problems, and how to live in an environment friendly way in the region where people are living. And above all, not only individuals' effort, a collective effort, what people can do to safeguard their local environment, to fight against the adverse forces of corporate culture. So all these things are really thought-provoking. And I think this is what we intended to know from you, so that the larger part of the country also will learn and try to respond in their own way. Thank you very much on behalf of Breakthrough Science Society once again. There are a few questions. As I said in the beginning, a lot of questions were already raised during the registration and which have been passed on. A few we would like to place here, and maybe permit one or two speakers to appear in the Zoom also later. So I request all the participants to unmute your videos. So let us have a lively discussion for about 10 minutes. So before allowing participants to place their questions in Zoom, from the chat, I picked up a few very simple questions, but very relevant questions. There is one question to Mr. Sonam from Sikananda. She has asked, you have shown that black, the glaciers now, which is supposed to be white, is looking so grayish and black due to the soot, carbon soot depositing. Does not the glacier melting wash away these mountains, the soots? So soots should also be washed away. That's what the speaker feels.
Not really. Much of the ice sublimates, and there is some melting on the melting mostly happens on the edges where it meets the mountains or the rocks, etc. The soot goes lower and lower. Soot and debris goes down as the glacier lowers. So some part, yes, may be washed, but there is so much new smoke coming and depositing every day from the thousands of diesel taxis that bring tourists, and it's only tourists and what trucks bring for them right now. Now imagine if there were heavy industries in these fragile mountains, how much of more black smoke would be released. So this will keep getting deposited every day, even if some are washed away. But I'm afraid not all is washed away. It just goes down with the ice, as much as I have seen.
Okay, thank you. And there are also a few questions related to the climate change science aspect. I feel that it will be very difficult to place those things, but the very important questions raised by students I would like to place here. A student from Norway, Mr. Payal, he has asked a very often asked question: how do we see the development versus this climate change? What is the balance? What is the trade-off? This is the question. Probably you yourself may be able to answer, Mr. Sonam.
I would just say that development is not bad. Which kind of development? The kind of development that we were doing of solar heated houses is also development. It enhances human comfort, but without ill effects. It's more about how much side effects do you cause while doing your so-called development. If you don't, then you can. But if you cause so much side effects, then it is not development. It is actually, as I say, destruction rather than development, vinash rather than vikas. So we'll have to draw lines, make rules of the game. Right now, we are playing the game without rules. You can imagine playing volleyball with no net or low nets, cricket without wickets. So this is how we are playing on this planet Earth right now. No rules, nothing, do anything, use and throw like you do with your water bottles and packets and all this. This is what we are doing to the planet. So first draw the rules of the game and then play the game of development. It won't be bad.
Yeah, very right. And even in your talk, you pointed out that people should have a say in what type of development is required. So it should come from the people's side and with the rules, whatever now you mentioned. Thank you very much. There are also a couple of questions to Professor Dhrubajyoti. This is related to the climate part. One question is someone has asked about repeatedly about this Minkowski cycle, the temperature change due to the rotation of the Earth. Can you briefly explain that?
Yes, I did not go into that aspect of climate change at all. You see, climate change can take place naturally. The main point is that the energy that the Earth receives from the sun, it either goes up or goes down. Now, this can be in different ways. One is the sun's irradiation might change, like we have the sunspot cycles, 11-year cycle, when the sun's energy that it's cyclically changed. And the other is that the orbital changes of the Earth. You can change the precision, you can change the tilt, you can change the rate of rotation. And these also take place in cycles of several thousand years. And these cycles are known as Milankovitch cycles. And they are 100,000 or 26,000 or 11,000 years. So there have been climate changes in the past, like just 800,000 years ago, there were alternate periods of glaciation and warm periods. They alternated with each other. So what caused that warming and that cooling? It must be the natural causes. And the natural causes that are possible are the changes in the Earth's orbit, as well as some of the energy that is emitted by the sun. So Milankovitch cycle is the cycles of the changes in the Earth's orbit. And that plays a part in the climate change.
Okay, thank you. I think they can refer about this more in open sources and learn about them. And there's also one more question from Mr. Deepak Kumar. He feels that this temperature rise, average rise of 1.5 degree seems to have already touched by 2024. Is it true?
Yeah, the point is.
This is one question. And related.
Point is 1.5 is the average rise, not the rise of a particular year. The temperature rise measured over a period of years, maybe 10 years, 20 years, or 30 years. So average rise during that period is 1.5. So already 2023 temperature is 1.48 degrees higher than the pre-industrial temperature. But that does not mean that the average temperature has also increased by 1.48. Average temperature will be determined by taking the averages over several years and then finding out whether the temperature has crossed the 1.5 or not. Individual year or individual locality, it may breach 1.5 degree temperature, but that would not mean that the global average has reached the 1.5 degree. But we are very close to that. We are very close to that, both in terms of the greenhouse gas concentration as well as in terms of the temperature. We are only 100 ppm away from the critical value.
Yeah, okay. So now there are also questions related to the local climates, the regional climates, what you can say, that how do the traditional knowledge and practices followed by the local people can help in mitigating or developing certain adaptive techniques for this climate change? This is one question. Maybe I think Mr. Sonam also can think of answering this.
So, like I showed you the yaks being used for plowing rather than tractors. So these are ways in which you avoid much of the complications and also keep good health for yourself. These traditions, for example, also of walking rather than just using a motor car, even if you go to buy a matchbox. I mean, all such values. And most of all, I would say, rather than small traditions, what I value most is the great Indian tradition of contentment, fighting desires rather than, blindly trying to fulfill desires. 2,500 years ago, Gautama the Buddha, who was a son of India, gave to the world this message. He said, "It is a greater achievement for human beings to conquer a single desire than to fulfill 1,000 desires." Now, this is what we need today in the world. We are all chasing after fulfilling desires, thousands of them, and a new one raises its head every time we fulfill the 1,000th or the 1,001st. Whereas if we consider our achievement, our success in conquering desires, in eliminating desires, then we will be working on the demand side rather than just the supply side. This is the teaching and tradition we need for the world, and this is what can make India a Vishwa Guru. These days, I only hear about switching to solar electricity or wind electricity, but we don't talk about reducing our needs by half or by 2/3 or 3/4. Actually, just switching from one to the other may not solve the problem unless it is accompanied by reducing the demand side also. So these are some values of Indian traditions that.
Yeah, thank you. And there are also questions from the chat bar, YouTube chat. And grouping all these things, I feel the one repeated question that has come is what students and young people, including scientists, should do. This is one thing. Number two, how to introduce an education, environmental education in the school program. So far, no such thing seems to be there. Can you say something about this? One of the speakers can answer. In the school curriculum, yeah.
Yes. Mr. Sonam can tell his experiences of the school that he has set up.
Yes, yes.
I think he has some problem with his mic or maybe the connection.
Oh, I see. Right. So I think we are nearing the end. Maybe one or two audience from the Zoom who have raised their hands may be allowed by the Zoom managers to place their questions in the forum. Mr. Yogarajan, you may permit.
First of one journalist.
And please unmute your videos. Please unmute your videos so that since we are recording, it will be very helpful to have a very lively atmosphere. So please unmute all the speakers. I request to unmute.
So I request Mr. Saha, journalist from Telegraph, to
yes.
write. Saha, are you able to hear me?
Yes, sir. Yes, please.
Yeah. Please go ahead. You can unmute your audio and raise question. You can unmute your video too.
Sir, my question to Sonam sir is, can you share any successful project or initiatives you have been involved that have made a significant difference in environmental preservation?
Mr. Sahu, I think in his speech at the end, he showed the web page where all these informations are available. So
I think he already discussed that how in his school he is saving the environment through plowing and through the artificial glaciers, etc. So I think he has already described that.
Yeah. Yes. So next question, please.
Mr. Ramji Singh. Mr. Ramji Singh, you may kindly ask.
Unmute video, please.
Hello, am I audible?
Yes.
Yeah, first of all, I would like to ask Mr. Sonam Wangchuk that you said about the repeated number of landslides, the continuous melting of the glaciers, and the consequent repeated landslides that are happening with a span of 4 years and even lesser or somewhat intermediate timing. So these are causing the damage of the top layer of the topographical soil in the sensitive Ladakh region. And again, when the repeated thing is happening later on, that is eroding away and even taking away all the remaining soil and other useful nutrients from the soil. So the growth of the plants is a matter of question and the consequent vegetation. And can you tell that from the fragile ecosystem point of view, what are the consequent damages to the life, the diversity of life that is staying in the subterranean region, the soil region? So what exactly is...
Thank you. But I think we encourage questions based on certain clarifications, what the speakers have been speaking about. But this particular question seems to be demanding a lengthy answer. However, if Mr. Sonam is here, he will be able to answer. There are certain technical problems.
I think Mr. Sonam is not on Zoom at this moment. I think there is an issue.
So we will, and friends, we are also recording all the questions which has come in the chat, and we will, if not now, we will be.
Can I ask one question to Dr. Mukherjee, please?
Please.
Sorry. One question. Actually, my name is Sohardo, and Actually, someone actually they confused my name with my profession. So someone actually else asked on behalf of me. So can I ask my question now?
Yeah, go ahead.
Yes.
Yes, please.
So actually, my question to Sir Dhrubajyoti sir. Actually, my one question is, sir. Like we have seen that there have been cases of tornadoes in various places of India, like West Bengal, and like is it an outcome of climate change, and and can we expect more tornadoes like this in the future?
Tornado is not a result of the climate change. Tornado is a result of certain definite conditions in the atmosphere that gives rise to the tornado. What the climate change does, because the climate change puts up more energy in the atmosphere, the tornadoes that happen, they become more frequent and more severe. So we may expect that there will be more tornadoes, more frequent tornadoes in the coming years.
Okay.
They were not very common. They were not known. Tornadoes occurring in West Bengal were not known 20 years ago.
Yes, sir. That was what I was asking, actually.
I am Nalaswamy from Chennai, Tamil Nadu. Am I audible?
Yes, yes, please.
Congratulations to both the eminent speakers. As our friend Dr. Venkatesan already has said that Dr. Sonam has taken us to the Ladakh and explained it so nicely. And I don't have much questions to him, but he has given very good ideas. But to Dr. Professor Mukhopadhyay, I have a small one. In one of the your comment there about what is stored for us in the climate crisis and all, he said 1.5 to 6.4 degrees Celsius. I don't think anybody in the IPCC or comment had such an opinion. It can go 4 degrees, and as you later on you explained very nicely that it is an average, it's only 1.4, 1.8. It may go, but everybody is trying to contain to 2.0, and the threat is there, but it's not that alarming. That's what my feeling. And thank you for your enlightening speeches, and the co-host for giving me the opportunity. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Nal. I mean, yes,
6.4 is the maximum rise. You see, every modeling, it has got a range. There is what I said, the 4.4 is the median value, but it can go up to 6.4. There is a likelihood of its reaching the 6.4 value also. 4.4 is the medium range, but for that particular pathway, you can get a range from 4 to 6.4. The median is 4.4.
It's fine. It's okay. Thank you.
Can I ask a question?
Please.
Yes.
Unmute your videos.
Yes.
Sir, may I?
Yes. So what I wanted to ask, first of all, thank you very much. I think Professor Dhrubajyoti Mukhopadhyay as well as Mr. Sonam Wangchuk has correctly mentioned that there has to be some steps taken by the governments. So I think although we are all talking about the reason of climate change as well as what kind of individual steps we should be taking, but I think on the level of government, what kind we expect and what we should demand or pressurize. If you kindly elaborate on that matter.
Yes, actually, to combat the climate change or to face the adverse effects of the climate change, two things are necessary. One is individually what we can do, and Mr. Sonam had already discussed that what individual actions can be taken, but there are certain things which has to be done on the level of the society and the level of the country, like enlarging the area of the forests. That is an action which only the government can take this decision, or restrict framing laws so that the factories do keep their emission at a certain level. So the government has some duties also to combat climate change, and we should build up people's movements to urge the government to take up those measures so that the emission is kept at a reduced level, and through enacting proper laws for the industry to promote forestation. But we find that in India that is not being done. What is needed is that the forest areas should be extended. But the new Forest Act that has been promulgated recently, a few months back, I think, that opens up the forests to commercial exploitation. So opening up a forest to commercial exploitation means that the forests will be degraded. And it is often said that if you cut down the forests, you must do some plantation, compensating plantation elsewhere. But again, the scientists have shown that a plantation does only 40% of the absorption that a forest does. Because a forest is a total biological entity. There are shrubs, there are trees, all these things together, they absorb the carbon dioxide. And the natural forest absorbs 40% more carbon dioxide than an artificial plantation. So these things government should do.
Sir.
The forests and rein in the industry to limit their carbon dioxide emission.
Sir,
may I ask?
Sir, hello.
Yes,
Hello.
please go ahead.
Can you listen to me?
Please go ahead.
Hello. What I was asking was that I was interrupted in the midway. That India. Hello.
Mr. Abhishek, you unmute your video and speak.
Okay, sure.
May I ask? I have three questions.
What I was saying was that in India, we don't have a particular provision for the marine territory, our marine resources to be protected, because there are multiple intergovernmental agencies and ministries working separately in their way for the particular areas to be concerned. So are the marine laws quite not strict to protect the marine biodiversity and overall marine health in India?
So what is your question?
What I said like
government has no.
What I said is that what should be done for the particular protection of the fragile ecosystem of the marine diversity and the marine health overall, because in India we don't have any particular rigorous marine ministry to control it. There are multiple stakeholders of the government in different ministries. They are acting respectively for the particular areas they are concerned with. We don't have a single marine ministry like that, which will be working uniformly for all the aspects covering the marine environment and the marine health and the biodiversity. So are the laws not powerful enough to control the things to be done, which is eroding our marine health and marine resources?
Okay, thank you very much. Now it is a question which requires a very elaborate answer, and it's a totally different type of because you have an opinion which you have placed it as a question also. Very serious question, of course. We respect that, but I think we should take it up in a later way. We will note it down. I think, Professor, any answer for this question?
No, I was telling that there can be no two opinions, that there should be a coordinated action to protect our marine biodiversity by controlling fishing, by controlling the discharge of effluents to the seas. So these laws should be enacted in a coordinated fashion to protect our marine diversity. There can be no two opinion about that. It is not being done now. That is also correct.
Okay, so there is one repeated question which has been raised by one of the audience, that how the solar flare will affect this climate change, and it is expected that in 2025 there's going to be a massive ejection of a solar flare and whether it will have any impact?
The solar flare will have more impact on our ionosphere rather than on the atmosphere. So the ionospheric things, the communication, the satellites communication, the wireless communications, these things will be affected. But solar flares, they don't affect, they are in very short duration phenomenon. Rather, the change of solar irradiance, which waxes and wanes in a cyclic fashion, that has got more influence on the climate rather than individual solar flares. Individual solar flares are more important for in the ionospheric.
Okay. So I think we can allow 2 more questions. We can go only up to 9:30. But once again, I place here that all these questions we will note down. And as the topic is of interest, not only from the scientific point of view, from the point of view of collective action, we may have to divide the topics and continue some of the topics in a seminar forum, in a seminar form in a later period. However, now we will allow a couple of questions to be taken up, and with that we will conclude. So, Mr. Yogarajan, you may permit one of the people who have raised the hand. Maybe there is Mr. Manoharan and Tista better, but please unmute your videos, or we will not know whether you are ready to ask your question.
Hello, sir. Thank you for allowing me to ask the question, Mr. Yogarajan. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I'm able to hear you, but I am unable to see you. You unmute your video?
I am unmuted. My video is unmuted.
Okay, go ahead.
All right. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Actually, more of an observational question. What I understand from the eminent panelist is that science is trying hard to kind of do whatever it can. But don't you think corporates and governments are smartly putting blame on us individuals and smartly moving away on this climate change action, that they are not doing their part, but just saying that you guys have to do your part in science and environmentalism, and we are not responsible. You are responsible. Don't you think that that's a smart way of corporates and governments pushing it to us?
I fully agree.
Okay, understood. Yes.
Science has provided that how we can answer to how we can combat the adverse effects of climate change. It is the political economic system and the rulers who are not implementing the recommendations of science, who are hesitating, dilly-dallying to implement what science recommends. That I fully agree with you. And for that, the present socio-economic system, economic political system is responsible.
Okay. So one more, the last question. Rajan may permit somebody.
Mr. Preetham Sarkar, you may please raise your question. You already raised your hand.
Mute your video.
Or
yes, sir. Am I audible?
Yeah. Please go ahead.
Sir, I have 3 questions. Sir, can nuclear energy be an option for us if we can manage the nuclear waste? And the second question I would like to ask that who will bear the cost of the drastic infrastructure change to change our to turn us from the fossil fuels to all the renewable energy sources? And the third question is what Sonam Wangchuk sir has said, that they have all shifted to the cattle bearing in the farmland. So, sir, I heard and read about that methane pollution is also there because of the cattle bearing. So, sir, I would like to be answered on those questions. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. This is the last question. Professor, please.
Yes. What was your first question?
That was related to nuclear energy. I think.
Yes, nuclear energy is one of the options, but nuclear energy has some serious problems associated with it. So that's why I did not say include nuclear energy when I talked about the transition. There are better options than nuclear energy with less hazards, like solar, like wind, like small hydroelectric power. They are preferable to nuclear energy because of problems related to nuclear energy. The radioactive waste disposal is one of them. There are several others also.
The second question is, who will bear the cost of transition from fossil fuel
Actually,
energy
I
to...
put that question in my slide, one of the slide. I said that is the crux of all the negotiations in the who is to bear the cost. There should be some agreement. There was an agreement that you should have a differential responsibility. That is, the developed countries who are the beneficiaries of the industrialization that gave rise to the present problems, they should bear the main bulk part of the financial responsibility for transitioning to the more green economy. That is necessary. But that is where the negotiations are failing, and only there is a glimmer of hope in the last COP. There has been a fund and some money has already been deposited for the disaster and to meet the disasters faced by the developing countries, to meet the costs of the developing countries. But for the mitigation and adaptation measures, that fund is still not forthcoming. And third question was?
The last part of the question is about the livestock.
Oh,
their waste, they also emit.
They also emit, but 2 cows emitting methane does not have, it is not a big farm with hundreds or thousands of cows. They are all emitting methane. It is not like that. What Sonam said, I believe that's what he meant. It is a small individual effort, and that does produce methane, but that is negligible compared to what methane comes from other sources.
Yeah, I think now we are coming close to the end of the program. And friends, let me, on behalf of Breakthrough Science Society All India Committee, thank both the speakers, Professor Dhrubajyoti, he is the president of our society, and also Mr. Sonam, who agreed to be a speaker here and who consented to appear directly and talk to us. So I should thank him and the personal secretary who enabled him to be with us today. And we had a very wonderful session of knowing the science, the impact, the alarming trend to which the climate change is taking us to, and also the different mitigative measures at personal level and collective level, what we can take up from what is going on in the Ladakh. Friends, it's a very serious issue, and the talks have given us some kind of education, I would say, that we have got a lot of things to learn from, and particularly the people who are living in the cities have many things to change in their lifestyle, as well as we have a responsibility to collectively act to their respective governments and whoever be at the helm of affairs to take up measures to immediately curtail the emissions which are responsible for this change. As it was pointed out in the first presentation, that even if we stop everything emission now, the things which are already in the air will continue to act for some more time. So it's really an alarming thing. So with these educative talks, what we had today, we have many things to think about, and we have many questions which have come in this seminar, which we have noted down. We will also plan specific sessions. I would probably talk to the organizers and think of planning specific sessions related to what the governmental actions are and what are the collective actions the people can think of and various aspects of this climate change. So, and I hope you have all enjoyed these two talks today, and with a lot of thanks to all the participants. More than 2,500 people registered and more than 600 people have already joined in the Zoom, and hundreds of people have watched in YouTube, and many thousands are going to watch these YouTube records in the future. And I think this will lay a foundation for a long-term program to avert the long-term impact of this climate change. Thank you very much, and thank you all. So let us close the